Joining me now is Daniele Verri, an Italian football expert. We're going to talk through what should be a really, really interesting year in Serie A. We'll start, I think, with a slightly more focused look at the games to come and then talk more about what could be a big year in Italy. On Saturday, the oldest club in Italy, Genoa, take on Internazionale, the side who last season, Daniele, won the league and won the league incredibly comfortably.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and they are favourite to win the league also this season. They haven't changed much in their squad, and they have added Taremi, who's a great striker, in my opinion, or a very good striker, and Zelinski from Napoli. So they haven't changed much. They are the team to beat. They have the better squad. They are used to play together. They kept the same structure. They kept the same manager and everything. So they're definitely the team to beat. Genoa is a place where no one is comfortable. If you remember that last season, Inter were owed to a draw in Genoa, 1-1 in the end, in December, I think it was. It's not a comfortable place to be. Obviously, Genoa, they have lost Retegui, who moved to Atalanta due to Scamacca getting injured in pre-season. They are about to lose also Gudmundsson, who was probably the main protagonist of their great season, but they kept Gilardino in the dugout, which is good because he's a very good manager. He proved to be a good manager, although it was his first Serie A season. He prepared the team brilliantly. Genoa was a club or a team that could honestly occupy all spaces on the pitch. They would move together as a team, defending as well as attacking. It was actually a pleasure and quite a surprise for me to see how Genoa performed, so to say, last season. So they are a good club also this season. Obviously, I mean, losing Retegui is a big loss for them, in my opinion, although he scored only 7 last season. But I mean, it was a season in which he had several injuries, but the player is there, he's good. That's why Atalanta invested 25 million straight away for him. Gudmundsson is also going to be a major blow for them, but apart from them too, and the keeper, Martinez, who moved to Inter, exactly. They kept the same team, and I can see them performing well. I mean, they bought Vitinha last season in January just because they knew they would sell Retegui at some point. I'm sure. So I think they'll be fine. It won't be an easy game for Inter. In pre-season, we've seen good things, but we've mainly seen not such good things from Inter. But I mean, against Chelsea in the last draw, in the last friendly, they started showing what they're capable of, and I'm sure they'll be ready for the start of the season. Also considering that they just extended Lautaro Martinez contract until 2029. That's a massive news for all Inter fans and all, also for the squad and the club and everything. I mean, he's probably the best player we have in Italy at the moment.
Yeah, unbelievable site. I mean, unbelievable sort of contract extension. Genoa are interesting. I mean, at the start, Luigi Ferraris, they're actually quite tough to beat, aren't they? I mean, Genoa is not an easy place to go.
Nowhere. I mean, it's a very tough place to be honest. The atmosphere in Genoa is fantastic. Let it be Sampdoria, let it be Genoa in this case. I mean, the stadium is always full. It's very tight. It's a bit of an old stadium for those who've been there. But the atmosphere is honestly hot in there. So, as I said, last year, Inter didn't go past a draw there. And I mean, they haven't drawn many games last season.
Yeah, 94 points. 94 points last year, Inter. I mean, that close to 100 points.
Yeah, actually 19 more than the second place, the AC Milan. So this is winning the league by margin.
We will talk AC Milan. Obviously, they're hosting Torino in a second. But AC are one of a number of clubs. The chasing pack really have pretty much all replaced their managers, haven't they? Antonio Conte obviously going in at Napoli, Fonseca going in, Thiago Motta going in to Juventus as well. The whole chasing pack have said, we're not good enough, and they've started with the managers, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, and this is right, so probably. I mean, we've seen it was not only obviously his fault, if you can talk of faults, but Allegri at Juventus couldn't produce a decent kind of football, I would say. But you have to say, he also didn't have the same squad he had when he reached the Champions League final twice in 2000. I mean, that's another category of football players he had at disposal. Juventus had several issues, got kicked out of European competition. I mean, it's difficult, to be relegated out of Europe while you're playing a match and keep the players motivated. They knew they would lose that at some point. Still, they were running for a top 4 finish and they got kicked out. I mean, it was honestly very difficult. Last year, they won a Coppa Italia. They clinch Champions League qualification. I mean, obviously, if you are Juventus, you always aim for the title. So there's no, as Boniperti used to say, former president of Juventus used to say, winning is not important at Juventus. It's the only thing that counts. So this is Juventus and this is Juventus mentality. So if you are Juventus, you have to win independently of the roster you have, independently of the manager you have. But I mean, they had tried during the Agnelli era, the late Agnelli era, to offer a more entertaining brand of football with Pirlo, with with Sarri. First of all, who won the 9th league title in a row, and then with Pirlo, both of those experiments, let's say, didn't really explode in that sense. And then they called back Allegri, who was the manager who was meant to bring Juventus back to past glories. He couldn't make it, but as I said, he also had to face a lot of pressure and a lot of issues and internal issues. So all in all, I think he did a good job.
Looking towards,
but they changed manager, as you said. Sorry if I interrupt you. They changed manager, as you said. Motta did extremely well in the last 2 seasons with Bologna. Last year, qualifying Bologna that way, in that fancy way, was fantastic. So he is a great manager. He's a very good manager. He proved that at Bologna. This is the next step. So if you move away from a place like Bologna to go to Turin, you have the chance to manage Juventus and play Champions League and manage players that you didn't have at Bologna, although they proved good and they got sold for a lot of money to Manchester United and wherever they've gone to. I mean, it's a next step also for him.
Yeah.
And we will see what he does, but I'm confident he's good. He understands his football, so he'll be fine.
You don't turn that job down. If you're a Bologna,
no way.
How well you're doing, you don't turn that job down.
No,
AC Milan obviously were the main challengers to Inter Milan. If we want to say they were challengers last year with that giant gap. They're a really interesting side this year, AC Milan, I think. I was looking through sort of who they've brought in, the transfer sort of approach so far for AC Milan, and I still can't quite nail them down. Obviously, you've got Emerson Royal, Morata going in there as well, who's not fully fit after the Euros, and Pavlovic as well, who's a very, very good player. Where do you pitch AC Milan at the moment? Obviously, they host Torino in their opening game.
Yeah, I pitched them where they were last season, around second, third place. I mean, last season they were conceding way too many goals. They could play good football at some point, or let's say throughout the season, several times throughout the season, but they were not consistent enough and they were not stable enough. They conceded way too many goals that was due to the defense, but also to the midfield, not shielding up enough in front of the defense. This is going to change. I mean, we've seen them beat in Monza last night in the Trofeo Berlusconi. And at the end of the Trofeo Berlusconi, in the press conference, the manager, Fonseca himself, said, the player we are after is Fofana from AS Monaco. We all know that. So they need a defensive midfielder, a strong man there in the middle to give them a bit of solidity and stability right in the middle to cover up the defense. And one of those players, I think, is going to be Fofana, if they're so open to talk about him. And Fofana hasn't played at all in this preseason for Monaco because they all know that there are more than chats about him. So he's going to leave the club for sure. And he's probably go to AC Milan. And then AC Milan will probably have also that stability that they need. Obviously, they change manager, they change several key players, and you don't mold the team within a week. So they will have time they will need time to put all the pieces together, which is something that Inter will not need to do because it's mostly the same people that have played last season.
They should beat Torino on Saturday, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I think so. Because Torino also, they changed manager. Vanoli, I mean, Juric last season, the last few seasons offered quite a boring, in my opinion, kind of football. Aggressive but boring. They always had troubles in scoring goals. They were quite solid at the back, but they were never spectacular to watch. Let's see what Vanoli is going to do. Zapata started the preseason very well. Yeah. They bought, what is he called, the Scottish player? They bought up front. Yeah, Che Adams, exactly. They bought a Scottish player up front, so we're going to see how he performs. So Torino also haven't changed that much. Obviously, they lost Buongiorno to Naples, who's a massive player. He is one of the, he was the future captain. He was going to be a key player. He's going to be probably also an important player for Italy, for the national team at a point.
25, isn't he? 24?
Yeah, he's very young. He's very young. And he's a good player. He's a man marking is really good. Really good. He hasn't got that much of a Calafiori, like as in building up the game from behind. But as a man marker, he's a great player. He's a good player.
I was excited.
But I expect AC Milan, as you were saying, I expect AC Milan to beat Torino on Saturday.
It's interesting, just very quickly, we'll move on in just a tick, but it's a bit like Daniele Rugani, when Rugani came through and there was this idea that he was going to be this glorious centre-back who's going to lead Italy forward, and he's gone on to a very, very good career, but he didn't quite reach those heights, and sometimes Buongiorno sort of reminds me of that a little bit. Is that fair? From your face, I say no.
in terms of, I don't know, it's difficult to say. It's... still quite early in his career for
I suppose.
Buongiorno to judge, I will say. Yeah. What I've seen of him, or what I think of him, is that he's a very good man marker and he's a player that has potentials to play for the national team. I've never seen Rugani really doing it somehow. I don't know. He's a fair defender, he's a good defender, but I never had the feeling that he can
go the extra level.
Let's put it like that. Yeah, but
very good defender all the same. Let's head to Monday's action, and then we'll talk slightly more, because there are a couple of interesting stories, Napoli being very much one of them.
Yeah.
Juventus take on Como, of course, on Monday. Khéphren Thuram, Douglas Luiz going in to Juventus. We've mentioned, obviously, Thiago Motta taking over. Como are really interesting, obviously, promoted last year. Some big names in there, obviously led by Cesc Fabregas as well. What on earth are Como going to do this year? I cannot nail this side down at all.
In the end, I think they're going to be in the pack of those who's going to struggle to keep the league. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm too pessimistic, let's put it like this. But what we've seen of Varane in recent years is not a player that competes at the highest level.
And picked up an injury, of course, the other day in the friendlies as well.
Exactly. Pepe Reina. The big names that came, they were all free agents at Como. They bought a German player from Fortuna Düsseldorf. Let me check the name exactly, because I don't always... Engelhardt from Fortuna Düsseldorf. I've seen him playing in the Bundesliga. He was a good player. They paid over 8 million for him, or I think 11 million. I'm not sure, because they paid a lot of money for him. Yeah. A player who wasn't very popular in Italy, let's say. They've changed a lot. Moreno also, new player, but also free agent from Villarreal.
Belotti
They've changed a lot. Belotti, exactly. They've changed a lot. And normally Serie B clubs who change that much and go into Serie A do struggle because of the change of category, which is quite big. It's comparable to Championship and Premier League. It's not two kind of football. It's not two different sort of football, but there is a big difference between Serie B and Serie A. Yeah. They clinch promotion directly by being runner-up. in Serie B last season. As I said, they've changed much. They brought experience in there. Cesc Fabregas has little experience also. Obviously, he will know his football. He's seen enough important football to know what's going on there.
Yeah.
But there's a pack of clubs that will struggle to avoid relegation, or that will fight to avoid relegation, and possibly Como is going to be amongst them, despite the fact that they are probably the richest club in Italy, or at least their owners, these Artono brothers, are among the wealthiest men in football. Ever.
I mean, if we had 10% of their wealth, we could live 1% of their wealth. We could live very happily, I think.
Make it 0.5 and I'd be happy, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, unbelievable, the wealth behind Como, and obviously that's maybe a longer-term project, but they're like to struggle. Juventus, look, you're the expert, I'm not expecting a giant amount from Juventus this season, but they should find it very easy against Como, surely, in that game on Monday.
I think so. We've seen the first touches of Motta football in the preseason, Juventus preseason, which hasn't been very successful at all. They lost the last two games. We've seen the last one against Atletico in Gothenburg the other day in Sweden. But the first few things, we start seeing them. I expect Motta to play and to feel the same starting 11 as he did in Gothenburg. Como will obviously be very excited to be in Serie A, blah, 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 but playing in the first game of the season for a newly promoted club is never easy, and it's not going to be easy for them either.
No. Napoli travel to Hellas Verona for their opening game. Now, Napoli, obviously, they waited all those years for another title. They get their title. It's happened. We're flying. And then they finish 10th. It's chaos. They lose a lot of key names. I know that Piotr Zielinski, who you mentioned earlier on, advancing in age, but was still such a key player for them over that long period of success or relative success. Antonio Conte now goes in, possibly with a little bit to prove after a few jobs that haven't gone his way. Napoli are fascinating this year. And at the moment, at the time of recording, they still have Osimhen in that side. Whether that's going to be the case come September the 2nd or not, we don't know. What on earth? I mean, I think Napoli will beat Hellas Verona, but what on earth are Napoli going to do this season?
They're going to build for the future, I think. I can't expect Napoli to be one of the real contenders for the title.
Yeah.
No, nowhere near, to be honest. Lukaku will arrive at some point by the end of August. Osimhen will leave. Let it be Paris or London. Probably Paris in the end. Antonio Conte is capable of bringing enthusiasm and pushing people to the limit and making people better players, develop players into better players. So he knows how to win. He's got a winning mentality. He's hammering on your head every morning, every afternoon, and every evening about football. So definitely, I'm sure they will improve. But it's going to take a while for them to find their way back to good football, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Let's put it like this. Buongiorno is a good add-on, definitely. They kept Kvaratskhelia, who was at some point willing to leave. Same as for Captain Di Lorenzo. Di Lorenzo now plays as a centre-back. They play with a three-man defense with Conte. I don't know. We've seen him struggling very hard during the Euro. But I'm not sure he's going to do his best in a centre-back position either. No. I don't know. I don't expect that much from Napoli this season. Also because that club is a turmoil, a continuous turmoil with president, and it's a bit of a mess sometimes.
My favourite story about De Laurentiis was I think it was they got a draw. He went somewhere in Europe for the Champions League draw. They got a dreadful Champions League draw. He wasn't happy with the group stage. He screamed, stormed out the building, basically called a guy on a motorbike who was just driving by and said, drive me 350 miles or whatever it was, and gave him all the money to do it.
It wasn't 350 miles, but yes, he came out of the building and he said, "Yeah, just give me a lift. I need to get out here." Man, I mean,
I loved it.
But also the way he parted ways with Spalletti. I mean, who was the more, who had more credit in this and that. I could manage that club also if I had those players and blah, blah, blah. I mean, Spalletti here and there. Difficult personality also. I'm sure we could have a chat about Spalletti also, but I mean, somehow there was a toy, a functioning toy, and that was destroyed internally by internal, let's say, tensions. That was a pity to say, because, I mean, Napoli, at least for most part of the season, they really played great football in Italy as well as in Europe. They only lost to AC Milan in the quarterfinals of that Champions League edition. So,
yeah.
It was a bit sad, to be honest, to see Napoli playing that way last season. So there's a bit of dismantling sensation somewhere.
And hopefully for my barber as well, who is a very strong Napoli fan, and every time I get my hair cut, just let's just say is passionate. And sometimes I'm kind of like, just the hair, can we just do the hair? And he's like, yeah. And he just carries on. Great guy, but sometimes I'd rather be focused on the haircut. Atalanta last year, what a year it was for Atalanta. Finished fourth, of course. They had that incredible run in Europe. There was rumours that the manager was going to go, which I never quite believed off the back of last year. They've strengthened really well. They lost just two. I think they lost just 2 games on the road in this calendar year. They are a serious outfit, and with some signings, they actually look stronger this year, Daniele, I think.
If you allow me, I don't really agree with you in this point.
You're the expert.
If you allow me. No, I'm not an expert. That's not the point. It's just that, I mean, as we speak, they've got a few important players out injured.
Yeah.
And then Cup Miners, who is a absolutely central player in Gasparini's system, is going to Juventus, or at least has asked to leave the club and go to Juventus. So he won't be, I mean, he's not taking part in Warsaw to the Super Cup final against Real Madrid. He's not part of the squad. Al Bilal Touré, same thing. Bought him for 28 million, if I'm not wrong, and he also asked to leave. I mean, Atebour left because he finished, so to say, his period at Atalanta, whatever. I mean, I'm not sure that Atalanta are stronger than last season. In fact, I don't think so. I see Atalanta being a bit weaker. Scamacca out 6 months. Obviously, they got Retegui, who's, in my opinion, a very good player, a different player to Scamacca. But in my opinion, even though he didn't perform that extremely well last season, he's still a very good player.
I suppose De Ketelaere's got an awful lot to prove. Things haven't worked out for him in Italy that well, have they? And obviously into that Atalanta squad this season.
Well, they didn't work out at AC Milan. They didn't work out at all. He didn't score a single goal in the whole season, but last season he was great. He played great football with Atalanta. It was important, and that's why he's taken to the pitch tonight also as a, let's say, in the starting 11 as a starter. So he can be a regular starter this season. So obviously, I mean, he plays with 2 up front and then 1 behind the strikers, or with 2 behind 2, let's say, second strikers behind, a lone striker in the middle, Gasperini. So there is room for everyone. And if De Ketelaere performs as he did last season, then he's going to play a lot of games this season. That's why they kept him from AC Milan. So they had the right to buy him after he was on loan last season. They decided to keep him because he performed well. So in my opinion, he did well in his second Serie A season,
Yeah, and I suppose we saw with the Netherlands and the Euros as well, just how important it would have been to have Cup Miners in that side, and I suppose losing.
Yeah, of course, unlucky for him. Very unlucky for him.
Yeah, so it should be this. I mean, going through that squad, there's some real talent. But yeah, you're absolutely right in terms of I kind of missed the idea that a couple of those would likely be moving on. And at that point, all of a sudden, that squad does look sort of 30-40% weaker.
Because you have to replace such a player. He scored more than 10 goals last season. I mean, midfielders then score more than 10 in 1 year is a big loss. It's a big blow.
The last thing I'm going to ask you about before we get a sort of a general roundup on a couple of teams to challenge and a couple of teams to struggle is Roma. Now, obviously, Daniele Verri went in January and things went very, very well in terms of they were so hard. They just weren't losing games. Obviously, took a long time for things to sort of, I wouldn't even say go wrong, but just a couple of losses or things not to work. That man, obviously, is an incredible character, an incredible player, of course, in his day. Can he push Roma to a lot better now? Because it's been a flat year or so for them anyway.
I mean, he's very beloved by the people in Rome, which is essential because Rome is a tough place also to play football, to manage the club. There's a lot of pressure coming from all the local medias. It's a bit of an unusual situation for those who don't know it. Let's say for those who are not locals, it's going to be hard because you've got, like 10 radios and 10 TV stations like broadcasting 24 hours a day about Roma. So it's a bit difficult. They absolutely did well to extend his contract because he proved he could do it. He came in a difficult period after Jose Mourinho, he wasn't fantastic, but he's not the most unknown manager in the world. So it wasn't easy to take over. He did it very well. He won against AC Milan in the UEFA Europa League. He got all the way to the final, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, of course, he got all the way to the final. And no, of course not. They lost to Leverkusen in the semi-final because Atalanta won the final against Leverkusen. But anyway, I was getting messed up with Sevilla the year before. But anyway, he did very well, and he has strong owners because the Friedkin family are very wealthy, and they've been putting a lot of money, almost €1 billion so far, into the project. It's a lot of money.
I'll have 0.5% of that as well if you're offering.
Last week or 2 weeks ago, they presented the rendering of the new stadium. So they are there to stay. They are there to invest more money and possibly at some point make money out of it. They have gone through a period of let's say rejuvenating the squad and lowering the expenses of the squad in terms of wages and everything. So they are doing things well. It takes time. They bought Soulé, who was one of the best youngsters last season, Frosinone. Argentinian player like Dybala. They understand each other. They know each other. Let's see, they bought Dovbyk from Girona, who was an important player, and he performed very well last season in Spain.
He was one of the best players in that side that surprised everyone in Spain, wasn't he, Dovbyk?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And it was a bit of a surprise that in the end he decided to go to Roma, but fair enough. Yeah. They paid for him, they didn't come for free. And we'll have to see how fit Dybala will remain throughout the season, because Dybala is obviously a player that needs some breaks, that is prone to get injured. Muscular injuries have been, let's say, part of his process throughout the last few seasons. If Dybala is fit and if Dybala plays well, Roma plays better football than without Dybala. This is absolutely, let's say, a fact. This is a fact. And is very important on set pieces and everything. But I am relatively positive and optimistic for Roma regarding next season. I think they can do well. Since the Friedkin took over, their only real object or goal was to take part in the Champions League. They haven't done it yet. Mourinho talk here, talk there, won obviously a Conference League, got to a UEFA Europa League final, but he never got any close to Champions League qualification. And not even when Juventus were out and AC Milan and Inter had a bad season. So, Lazio got second behind Napoli when Napoli won the title. So, Roma still missed out on Champions League qualification.
Yeah.
At some point, they will have to qualify to Champions League.
And let's see if they can improve off the back of that 6th place finish last season. Let's talk about the 3 teams just quickly that you think will struggle this season. We've mentioned one of them perhaps in Como, but who do you think will be at the bottom end of Serie A this year?
Verona have been struggling last season, although they sold, let's say, half of their squad in January. They still managed not to go down, which was a big surprise to everyone, to be honest. But they are hot candidates not to avoid relegation, I would say, this season. We will see about Monza. They have a partly competitive squad, despite the fact that they lost Colpani, who was a very good player, was very good for Monza. They got Nesta in the dugout, first experience for him in Serie A for Alessandro Nesta. Bit of an experience, who knows who's going to do that. I'm curious about Udinese, if they can, because Udinese last season they struggled. Incredibly,
it feels like Udinese for years has been a slow rot, doesn't it? Just slowly but surely getting worse.
Yeah, because they keep selling their best players and relying on youngsters, unknown young players from anywhere in the world, and some older players. But I mean, they shouldn't have struggled that much last season in terms of their squad, according to the squad. So, but they did in the end. I don't know about Empoli. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about Cagliari, who avoided relegation incredibly last year, and they lost Claudio Ranieri, who can say whatever he wants, but the man is an asset. Anywhere he goes, he's an asset.
Really is, yeah.
And they've got Nicola now, who is a good manager. He managed to avoid relegation with Empoli last season, which wasn't easy at all. But when he had to start from the beginning, he normally didn't prove as, let's say, performant as he did when he came on throughout the season. I don't know. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to wish him any bad luck or anything. But I'm just saying that Claudio Ranieri has an aura around himself, and has an experience, and has a way, art, a personality that is worth 7-8 points. 9 points, maybe 10 points. I don't know. No, maybe 10 is too much, but it's. I think although he doesn't take to the pitch, a few points are down to his personality and presence.
I completely agree with that. I'm a huge fan of Claudio Ranieri. I completely agree with that.
He's a nice person also. He's a very, very, very cool guy.
I worked with someone who worked with him at Leicester, and just could, obviously what he did at Leicester was remarkable anyway, but outside of that, just could not have more nice things to say about Claudio Ranieri as well. Which I've heard of people who work with a few managers, as you will have done as well, who will not have said the same thing about those people. But we'll not get into slagging those off. So those are the teams who might struggle this season. We're saying we think Inter will likely retain the title. Who are going to be the main challengers? AC Milan, you said, probably second. Third and fourth, are we going to see a surprise in there, or are we going to go back to some of these bigger teams getting into the mix?
I mean, it will take a little bit of time, but I see Juventus developing throughout the season, because, I mean, they are on the verge of signing Cop Miners, who is a big player, for Italy at least. He is a big player. I mean, they are about to sign Nico Gonzalez from Genoa. From Fiorentina. If Gudmundsson finally moves to Fiorentina, as it seems to be, then that would basically free the space for Nico Gonzalez going to Juventus. And he's a player who can make Juventus a better team. Okay. Thereafter, Consensao, apparently from Porto. I mean, they know what they're looking for. They have a manager with a clear idea of football. It will need a little bit of time to implement it. They have a sporting director who has proved anywhere he's been that he's a great professional. Fabio Giuntoli. He brought Carpi to Serie A. Carpi is, I don't know, for the 60,000 people, small city around the corner from me.
I think there's more people in this building now when we're...
Possibly. He won the title. He won the title with Napoli because he was at the helm at Napoli. Then moved to Juventus. Difficult situation last year. A lot of misunderstandings with the manager, with Allegri. But he's the boss at the moment. He's the boss and he knows what he's doing. It's not easy to be at Juventus, buy players, sell players. But Juventus are investing money this summer. They are investing money. They are struggling to sell players so far, but they are investing money. They have already said those players like Szczesny, Chiesa, whatever, De Sciglio, and all those are out of the project. That we are not interested. We're going to sell them. Maybe by saying it, it's clear that you state clearly, okay, you're not part of the process. Obviously, if there are clubs interested and they know that they're not part of the process, they're gonna try to get them for less money because you said yourself that you don't wanna have them. But in the end, they will probably sell them. And I see Juventus developing well this season. Not winning the title, probably. No. I don't think so, but developing well. AC Milan, same thing.
Yeah,
same thing.
Yeah. We will see if
Roma, maybe. Atalanta, I mean, it's difficult that they really fight for the title because their squad is not as deep as Inter's. For example, Inter have two players of almost the same value on each position. But they can do well. They can do well, definitely.
I'm really looking forward to Serie A this season, Daniele. I think it's going to be a really good year. I think... Especially with a lot of that managerial movement, I think that adds a lot of new questions, a lot of new levels to this whole series, particularly with, obviously, it being mainly at those bigger clubs. There might be a couple of surprises in there. I'm not expecting a surprise, particularly from the Artemio Franchi, for example. I think Fiorentina will be fine, but not brilliant. It's going to be a really interesting year. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Fantastic expertise, as always. We will hopefully speak to you again very soon. And you told me you came from the beach to do this morning. So that is...
Yes, only because of you, mate.
That is commitment. If I can get an expert like you to leave an Italian beach, I've done my job. So thank you very much, pal. Much appreciated. And we'll hopefully speak to you again very soon.
Bye-bye. Thank you.